Alright, so I think we should start right now.
Okay, no problem. I do hope that everyone can hear my voice.
You can hear yourself, sir.
Okay, jelas ya? Okay.
Okay.
Jelas. Alright, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning, good evening everyone. So, welcome to our program which is webinar session. So, I hope that all of us are doing fine during this pandemic. So, I am Siti Najiihah Binti Baharudin and also my partner
My name is Ariani Wahida Binti Nur
as your moderators for today. So, for this webinar session, we will be discussing the peace, justice, and also strong institution, which is SDG 16, and disability inclusion. So, I am sure that everyone must be very excited for our next discussion. However, our discussion will be not complete without any guest, so we brought to you our special guest for today, Dr. Ikmal Hisham Md Tah. He's a disabilities rights researcher from Faculty of Law UiTM. Assalamualaikum Dr. Ikmal. Welcome to this webinar session and how are you?
All right. Waalaikumsalam. I'm fine. Okay. Thanks for inviting me to this session, and I do hope everyone will enjoy the session. Even though this is quite late in quite at 3 p.m. Yeah.
All right. So also do not forget to thank our audiences that are willingly to spend time and give support to us for today.
Okay, before we start, let me brief a few things about this webinar session. So the objective of our webinar is not only to fulfill our assignment requirements for COM 3090 professional speech communication, but we also would like to educate the public about how the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations can be inclusive to people with disabilities or PWD. So without wasting time, let's begin. So the first question is, Dr. Ikmal, can you tell us a bit about yourself, please?
All right. Thank you, Ariani. Yeah, is it? Okay. Just a brief introduction about me. Okay, I'm Dr. Ikmal, Dr. Ikmal Hisham Md Tah. Okay, I'm a law lecturer at Faculty of Law UiTM, and previously, I did my PhD at IIU. Okay, at Ahmad Ibrahim Kuliah of Laws on this on the topic of disability rights, and graduated in 2018. Okay, my first degree is from UiTM. My master's is from UK, from Hull Universities, and currently I'm a senior lecturer. So I'm embarked on this area, disability law, since 2011. And besides disability law, I also taught certain other subjects under public law, which include constitutional law, administrative law, and also a subject like business law. So that's my brief introduction about myself. Yeah.
All right. So, Doctor, I would like to ask, what attracted you to do a research on disabilities rights law?
All right. Why I'm interested to do my research on disability law is due to some other personal reasons, and also, of course, it's for my academic achievement. I'm thinking to do the area on disability law since 2011. Of course, when I start my career as a lecturer, of course, we need to pursue our PhD after we got our masters. Therefore, I decide to embark the area which are quite rarely to be explored by other researcher, and one of the area that I'm consider is quite interesting and somehow fascinate me a lot is on disability law, especially because at this moment there is lack persons who are love to explore this area of law, especially when it covers with the minority group like persons with disabilities. There are a lot of research has been done, especially research has been done in terms of women rights, children rights, rights of aborigines, orang asli, indigenous people, but not really much about disabled rights. So that's why I decide to embark on this journey. And after I do my reading, I communicate, provide with certain networkings with others. I found that this area has a potential to explore. Okay, so therefore I do encourage other students, other academics to explore in this area on disability rights, because in Malaysia, actually, we lack experts, okay, within this area. So we need to have more people actually to join this area, and then we can spread our knowledge. We can try to assist our nation developments, our academic areas, so we can develop as a developed nation in future. So that's why it's very crucial to embark on this area of disability rights. Okay.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. So, can you explain how the SDG 16 that promotes peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provides access to justice for all, and builds effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels could be related to disability inclusion? And what has the Malaysian government done to ensure disability inclusion is practiced in society? And what do you think what more should be done?
Okay. Before I move to relate between SDG and also persons with disabilities, of course, we need to know what's the idea behind sustainable development goals. Okay. Of course, when you are talking about sustainable development goals, this is a blueprint, okay, to achieve what we call as a better and sustainable future, which been adopted by the United Nations General Assembly since 2015, and this plan will be continued until 2030. And of course, when you look to the SDG, okay, it has 17 goals. Okay, and of course, one of the important goals that we are discussed for today is on the goal 16. Okay, so goal 16, uh, basically, when we are talking about goal 16, uh, this goal did not expressly mention about disability, okay, but still this goal is crucial because it will provide better in terms of accessing to justice, okay, to end in terms of discrimination facing by disabled people, and also to provide what we call as accountable institution. So that's why we cannot neglect the importance of goal 16 to provide with I can say a better institution in promoting and protecting the rights of people with disabilities. Okay, so when we are talking about SDG, okay, and persons with disabilities, okay, you are saying about what we call as a disability inclusion. Of course, this is the basic idea, okay, how we want to ensure that no one is left behind. Okay, so all categories, okay, including persons with disabilities, okay, give what we call as a given the opportunity to join, okay, to be part of the national development. So when you are talking about goal 16, okay, I can categorize this into three main aspects, okay, even though you have certain objective targets that you need to fulfill, okay, which is number one, we are trying to promote peaceful and inclusive society. So when we want to promote a peaceful and inclusive society, means that we need to end, okay, the discrimination that been facing by persons with disabilities. Okay, of course we can do this through a proper legal frameworks, okay, in terms of we need to enact laws related to non-discrimination clause that protect this group. Okay, and then we also need to ensure that we remove the attitude and environmental barriers that deny the rights of persons with disabilities. Okay, that's generally we can talk about the first part. Okay, end of abuse and discrimination. Okay, second part. Okay, when we are talking about the Sustainable Development Goal 16, this is a crucial one, which is to ensure the access to justice for all categories of people with disabilities. Okay, for example, that we need to ensure we are promote in terms of we call as rule of law, okay, equal access for persons with disabilities within the legal system, and also how we want to ensure that they have access to the court system, for example. Okay, so these are the things that's very crucial, okay, under goal 16, to ensure the access to justice for this for the persons with disability, to ensure that we have a proper access in terms of courts, okay, in terms of interpreters, okay, and then we also need to ensure our law is actually inclined with what we call as the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, okay, which Malaysia is also become the parties to that convention. Okay, so we need to ensure that when we ratify the convention, we need to implement that convention into our domestic law. And of course, we have Persons with Disabilities Act 2008. Okay, so by implementing the principles, the obligation under this convention to our local laws, therefore, okay, we can address a lot of concerns, a lot of inequalities that being facing by persons with disabilities. Okay, and of course, the third part, okay, under SDG 16, okay, we are talking about to ensure accountable, okay, and institution in managing affairs related to persons with disabilities. So at this point of time, we need uh, to ensure that our government has a proper strategies and also plan to implement the rights of PWD according to the convention and the act. And also we need to engage with what we call as the National Human Rights Institution, the civil societies, okay, in monitoring the convention that can benefit for us. So generally speaking, to everyone, okay, when we are talking about SDG 16 and also um, uh, persons with disabilities, a lot of things can be done within these main goals. And of course, Malaysia government has done a lot of things, okay, to improve the rights of persons with disabilities. For example, we become the members of the convention on the rights of persons with disabilities that we known as CRPD, and then we also enact our domestic legislation, okay, Persons with Disabilities Act 2008, okay, and also several other policies. Okay, for example, like we have also our national action plan policies, and also national action plan for persons with disabilities from 2016 until 2022, which based on Incheon strategy, okay, that we become parties, we become members to that, okay, at the Asian level. Okay, so these are what our government has done, okay, for disability inclusion. But of course, okay, even though we can say government has done a lot of things to promote disability inclusion, but actually, for your information, a lot of things need to be done. Okay, we cannot just simply being proud of what we are doing, but we need to strengthen our society. We need to mobilize the civil society especially, and also individuals, to ensure that they are actually understand, okay, the idea on disability inclusions that we being promoted under SDG. Okay, that's what my general ideas about SDG, and also what Malaysian government has done for this. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so next, let's move on to the next question. All right, so basically, the World Health Organization mentioned that factors which place people with disabilities at higher risk of violence include stigma, discrimination, and also ignorance about disability, as well as lack of social support for those who care for them. So the question is, Doctor, how has the Persons with Disabilities 2008 Act prevented these issues in Malaysia?
Okay. When we are talking about this prevented these issues, actually, we need to realize that the PWD Act, okay, even though some people saying they have a no teeth, okay, they are toothless tiger, but actually this act, actually this is the first act that actually being recognized the persons with disabilities under our legal system. So at that point we need to appreciate, okay, the effort made by government to enact this act, okay, and of course this act has provide with accessibility in terms of education, health, social supports, employment, okay, and cultural life, so on and so forth. And of course it administer, okay, the affairs related to persons with disabilities under two main institution, which is now we call it as National Council for Persons with Disabilities, and also Persons with Disability Development Department, which is responsible for the registration of persons with disabilities. So actually this act has been considered as the act that promoting, okay, and also protecting the rights of persons with disabilities in Malaysia, okay. But of course when we talks about stigma, discrimination, disabilities, these are the things that being um, generally happen. Okay, this is the things that even though we don't have the act, okay, the stigmatization and discrimination facing by PWD is actually very rampant. Is actually somehow is quite somehow being normalized by certain segment of the society. So by having this law, at least we can recognize them under our legal system. But let me tell you this, okay, even though we have this act, but there are a lot of things need to be done. Okay, we cannot just simply saying that okay, we having act, everything will settle. No, okay, we need to ensure that by having this legislation, okay, we need to ensure that okay the rights, okay, that it will at least address the issues of discrimination and stigmatization made by people against persons with disabilities. So that's why we need to have or to create more awareness, okay, to the people related to this act. Okay, so if you have this problem, okay, what the act, what the laws provide with the remedies or not. So these are the things that uh, the what we call as the government, the society need to do. Okay, so basically what I can say, okay, Persons with Disabilities Act, okay, actually address those concerns, but there are many things need to be done. Okay, we cannot just simply rely too much on one single law, okay, but we must also read, okay, other legislation to the Persons with Disabilities Act to ensure the disability inclusion can be implemented well. So that's what my talk on the act itself. Yeah.
All right. So the next one is how have you helped revise the People with Disability Act 2008, and also what more needs to be done in terms of giving this act teeth?
Okay. Of course, we need to remember that when we are talking about law, law is not perfect. Okay, law is not something that you cannot amend. Of course, after more than 12 years, it's a time for us to amend the Persons with Disabilities Act 2008, especially to ensure they address the current concern, like this sustainable development goals, okay, how we want to address the issues related to stigmatization and also discrimination being facing by this group, okay, and of course the most important concern by not just the disabled people organization but also for the society is the the issue under this act, where the act has been considered as toothless tiger. There is no penalty clause in this act. Okay, the issues related to section 41 and 42 of the Persons with Disabilities Act 2008, where this section actually in good faith bar, okay, any person who want to sue the government, okay, or the council, or the government in any ways that there is a breach the obligation under this act. So these are the things that need to be changed, because when you are talking about goal 16, okay, when it comes with the idea on access to justice, we must give full access to justice for disabled people. Okay, so the government need to look again, especially the section 41 and 42, which are being called as which deny the rights of disabled people to get to the access to the justice. So these are the concern when we want to revise the act. And of course, when we look to the act, okay, there are certain things that we need to address. For example, like we need to include the rights for learning disabilities, especially in terms of education, because this is some things that are being lacked to address in the current act. So I do hope that the government, okay, and the relevant authorities will take into consideration to the possibility to amend this act, okay, by looking into the enforcement mechanism, by being include all the categories of disabled, okay, learning disabilities, and even currently we also have rare disease community, okay, to be part of those who are being protected under the act. So actually there are a lot of things need to be done, okay, to improve or even to revise in this act. Okay, so that's what my opinion related to the act. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. The next question is how is our People with Disabilities Act 2008 different from the United Kingdom's Act for People with Disabilities?
Okay, so when we are talking about the differences between these two, we need to bear in mind that, okay, the culture of human rights in a country, in a developed nation like in UK, is totally different from what being practiced in Malaysia. Okay, in UK, of course, they have their Disability Discrimination Act since 1995. And of course, now this act has been replaced with Equality Act 2010. So in UK, of course, their act are much more we consider as being larger in terms of protecting not just for disabled people, but also those who are suffer under religion, under gender, under age, so on and so forth. So they in UK actually they have the 9 protected characteristics which include disabled persons. So that's why in UK they have the Equality Act, okay, that combine within all the Human Rights Act, which include the Disability Discrimination Act in 1995. Okay, but in Malaysia, of course, we only enact the act in 2008. Okay, of course, in 2007, 2008, we have the act, okay, that to promote and protect the rights of people with disabilities, which based on what when we ratify and become the signature to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. That's the things that you can discuss about the difference between PWD Act in Malaysia and also in UK. Another part I can share with you is that Malaysia has no anti-discrimination clause, especially under PWD Act. Okay, while in UK, it becomes the duty for the public authorities to have a duty to eliminate discrimination and promotes the equal of opportunity. And one interesting part when we discuss about Equality Act in UK, they are actually covers not just direct discrimination, but also indirect discrimination, including harassment, the victimization that being facing by people like disabled people. So this is something which unique Okay, something which shows how much they develop their concept of discrimination, not just in terms of direct discrimination, but also cover indirect discrimination, unlike our act, which we cover only the issues related to direct discrimination. And of course, the third thing I want to share with you in terms of the difference between UK and also Malaysia is that they provide with a large access to justice. Okay, which mean that okay, if you want to, if you have any complaints related to your disability, you are being discriminated by your employers, so on and so forth, then you can launch your complaint to the employment tribunal, example. Okay, for the employment tribunal, okay, you can also go to the court, okay, and you can bring judicial review to the court. So there are lots of opportunity you can address. Okay, you can go to the tribunal, you can go to the court. So this act has provide a larger in terms of access uh, to justice, unlike our PWD Act 2008. So these are the difference between the PWD Act in Malaysia and also what being practiced in UK, as I can say. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So before we end, the last question will be, Doctor. So, how is addressing the rights of people with disabilities important to Malaysia's development?
Of course, when we are talking about to address disabled people, okay, in our national development, the most important part is we need to include them in all the national or the government plan. For example, like in the next 12th Malaysian plan. So it's very crucial for the government to have the agenda to include disability as part of to improve not just the community, but also to ensure that they are actually not being neglected within their agenda. And of course, we need to ensure that any policies besides Malaysian plan, okay, guidance should include okay, disability as part of their plan. Okay, we have a policy related to the persons with disabilities for the students at the higher education level that been launched by our previous Minister of Education, Dr. Mazli Malik. Okay, and also we have certain other plans. Okay, so we need to ensure that we have a proper plan, like in public place transport, in terms of employment, for example. Okay, and don't forget to include persons with disabilities as decision makers. Okay, this is a crucial part. Okay, we need to include disabled representative. Okay, in any meetings related, okay, in any decision making process, okay, especially at the local council level, at the state government level. Because if you look to our current situation, we are much focusing on the role of the federal government. Okay, so we need to expand this to state government, to the local authorities, because when you look to the local authorities, they are actually having much influence to the life of persons with disabilities. If you look to the local council being played by Dewan Bandaraya Kuala Lumpur, by Petaling Jaya City Council, for example, they are very actively engaged with disabled community to ensure they have proper access in terms of public places, in terms of transportation. So these are the things that we need to address the rights of PWD into Malaysian development. And last but not least, we are talking about to training more advocates. Okay, we need to train more advocates. We need to train more activists. Okay, and professional in dealing with the issues related to disability, because you must remember, okay, disability issue is the issue that consider as multifocus, okay, and it involves single aspect of life. Okay, from them as a baby, of course we need to ensure they have the right in terms of their education, in terms of their social support. Okay, when they become adult, they need to get a proper rights in terms of their employment, and then when they are getting old, they also need to get proper support, social support, health, so on and so forth. So that's why we need uh to be prepared, Okay, we need to prepare, we need to ensure that we address the concerns that facing disabled community and put this as part of our national agenda, especially with the recent 12 Malaysian plan. So that's my talk on how we want to include the disabled inclusion to our national agenda. Yes. That's it.
Okay, I think that's all we have for today. So I'll summarize a bit about our discussion for today. So we have discussed about the importance of including people with disabilities in communities and also national agendas, especially the recent 12 Malaysian plan. And then we also have discussed about the Peoples with Disability Act 2008 and how it compares to the UK laws, and also how importantly, how this sustainable development goals have been needs to be more inclusive to people with disabilities. So thank you, Dr. Isham. Now it's time for Dr. Ikmal. I'm sorry, Dr. Ikmal. So now it's time for our question and answer session. So if you have any questions, please unmute your mic or write your questions in the chat box here. So actually, I have a question, Doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, when we say people with disabilities, do we include people with mental health issues as well?
Yes, of course. Okay, because when we include when we talk about disability, don't just limit disability into those who physical impairment, those who are facing what we call as learning disability, but it also include everyone. Okay, which include also mental health, because now mental health has become much concern. So that's why when we saying about disability, that's why we say disability inclusion, which means that we include disabled people from all categories, okay, which we will address their needs and also their concerns, especially. Yeah. So that's also my include mental health issues. Yeah. All right.
Oh, okay. So we have a question here from Ilya Masha. So, Doctor, how can we get information to help people with disability, especially if we know someone who are disabled and we want to help them with their problems?
Okay, when we are talking about this, how we want to get information, of course, okay, if you read from internet, okay, there is a lot of information related to how we want to engage or how we want to communicate with persons with disabilities, and of course, the most important part is that you need to ask them. Okay, we need to ask them what they want, because some of us they like to just, I can say, just use their own common sense just to assist them, because some disabled people, they are quite sensitive when it covers with assisting them, because they want to be treated same as the others. So don't try to, let's say, if you meet with blind person, you try to touch their white stick. Okay, you need to get the permission from them. Okay, you need to know the ethics in dealing with disabled people. For example, like those who are using wheelchair, don't simply touch the wheelchair. Okay, so these are the things that you need to know, okay, when you are interact with persons with disabilities. Okay, of course, besides looking from information in the internet, you also need to actually refer them to disability service unit, for example. Okay, and then if you have any problem, they might have the counselors to engage with them. So it's very crucial for us to what we call as to learn a lot of things, learn, relearn, unlearn on how we want to interact with persons with disabilities. Yeah, that's what it is. Mm.
So, if we okay, do we have any more questions?
Right. I like to ask a question.
Yes,
Assalamualaikum,
yes,
Dr.
doctor.
Ikmal.
Yeah, thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Aida. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm in my car at the moment. I'd like to know. Thank you so much for coming, and for being, for willingly, in becoming the guest for this show. Thank you so
Right.
much.
Welcome,
Okay.
welcome.
Yes. The thing is, I'd like to know because I was in the UK. I have a son who has autism,
Yes.
and we were in the UK, and we could see that it was really different,
Yeah.
in terms of perception and so forth as compared to here. It's different. I'd like to know, is it because of the law over there? Is it the law that has made the perception towards persons with disabilities, different compared to here?
All
Disability inclusion seems to be better than here. Is it because of the law over there
Ye-
primarily?
yes,
Yeah.
what I can say, in my personal observation and even in my views, of course in UK, in US, they are in terms of they are pioneer in terms of development, in terms of law, especially in terms of promoting and protecting disabled. For example, like in US, the first legislation that protecting PWD was enacted in 1990s. We have American with Disabilities Acts, and then we are being followed by Australia, and then we are following by UK in 1995. So what I can say in terms of their legal development is much better there. Okay, but of course, for me, that's one part of it. But when what my concern is that besides the legal development there, they are also having the culture that to recognize disabled people. For example, when I was in UK in Hull, I think in Hull in 2008. Okay, during that time, they have the Center for Persons with Disabilities. So let's say disabled unit, for example. Okay, if you have any problems, you can go to the center, and then we can ask for help. Okay, so during that time, this is something's not being exist in Malaysia. Even I think actually having that center to cater the needs for persons with disabilities or student with disabilities. But I think that's how the difference between the culture. So what I can say is that uh, law may be at one side, of course. Okay, they are much better because in terms of their legal development, they have their domestic legislation. Okay, and they are also becoming the one of the certain of their scholars are involving in drafting the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. But besides the legal development, there are also what I can say the culture to appreciate disabled people there. So this is some things that strengthen the application of the law. So this is what I can say. Okay, one side I agree the legal development at one side the culture they have to support the legal development, so that's why they have what we call as they're easily to adapt with the disability inclusion, Taida. That's my point of view on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, because I hope we can become, will become better as a country in terms of the culture and the legal aspects and other aspects in terms of disability inclusion,
Yeah.
because it's very upsetting to see, any ill treatment, of course, anywhere in the world, isn't it, right, with
Yeah.
regards to persons with disabilities.
Yeah.
And we hope, of course, this gets better and better because it's unfair, isn't it, right, on
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
to receive this kind of treatment.
Yeah.
It's very depressing for them, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
then as a parent as well, I feel, I feel upset sometimes because my son may or may not get good treatment from people. And then I worry about him, after I'm gone, what will happen. And, now that I'm still alive, I can, fight with him and so forth. But once I'm gone, what will happen? So it's a lot of anxiety that is found within parents. And, this lack of disability inclusion culture is very worrying. So how long do you think it'll take for us to get
Okay.
there? What's happening in the
Okay,
UK? Yeah.
I think in Malaysia context, I think it's important to mobilize especially the parent group related to disabled, and then we have the disabled people organization, we have non-governmental organization to actually to push for the better treatment for persons with disabilities, because in Malaysia somehow what I can say is we lack in terms of mobilization. Okay, we lack in terms of mobilization to tell to the government what they should do to improve the rights of people with disabilities. Okay, so because when we are actually members of the convention and we put it in our own laws, actually it's a duty for us to ensure to monitor what government has done. Okay, what government has done, because government will say, okay, I'm doing this. Okay, so what's next? So as those who the group, the civil society group, okay, they will play a very active role, and they will play a very significant role in order to push the government to do more works for disability inclusion. This is what I think we should do. Yeah, to mobilize the idea. Yeah.
So we have to be more vocal and tell them what to do, isn't it?
Yes, we need to be vocal, and then we need to have more people with disabilities, especially parent, especially those who suffer physical impairment, those who suffer mental disabilities, for all the groups to unite themselves and address those concerns to the people, because at this point of time we lack in these terms, or I can say this idea of mobilization. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ikmal.
All right, thank you, Dr.
For
Aida.
answering my questions and coming.
All right.
And talking. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming to our webinar. So please look forward for more webinars from our class, COM3090, by following us on social media, prof_speech on Twitter and Instagram, professional speech communication on Facebook, and prof space speech on YouTube.
All right, so before we end, special thanks to Dr. Ikmal Hisham for spending his time to us. We are honored to have you. So may Allah bless him greatly.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so do you want to stay for photography session, Dr. Aida?
All right.
Dr. Aida.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm still here.
Okay, so if everyone can turn on your cameras, we can have a brief photography session. But if that's fine, but it's nice if you would turn on your camera lah. Wait, I'll change the layout. Okay. Okay, I think that's enough lights. Okay lah. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you everyone.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Aida. Send my salam to Prof. Rosita.
Inshallah.
Lama tak jumpa Prof. Rosita dah. Okay.
Apa-apa hal nanti I contact you lah, Dr. Ikmal.
Boleh, no problem.
Pasal mobilizing tu.
Mobilizing tu actually. Yeah,
very
betul.
important. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Salam warahmatullah. All right. Thanks everyone.
Thank you so much everyone. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you everyone. Yeah. Okay. So
thank you,
that's
sir.
it, yeah. Nanti record session bagi Kak Ai kalau ada.
Okay.
Alright.
Ramadan Mubarak,
thank you.
Doktor.
Okay, happy Ramadan everyone. Ramadan Sharif. Okay. Assalamualaikum.
Okay. Salam.